Billy Moore.
Yes, Ms. Moore, it's Nancy Lee at CFSAC. Are you ready to give your testimony?
I am.
Thank you. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Were you ever so sick that you considered committing suicide? If not, then you have no idea how sick some of those with ME/CFS are. There are no figures on suicide from this disease. Causes of death would simply be suicide. But this disease kills people, as well as killing their lives. I am Billy Moore, and in this statement I am speaking for a man who wishes to remain anonymous, for my son and for myself. The following are this man's comments to you. I would like to share with you something that we ME/CFS patients all think about and know, but do not discuss, because we are afraid that revealing the full horror of our disease will leave us vulnerable to ignorant attacks. I have come to understand the meaning of suicide. I am loath to admit it, lest you dismiss me as simply depressed, rather than as tortured and utterly, hellishly hemmed in. But I share myself hoping that if you can see how horrific, how hopeless and forlorn our lives are, you will take action to rectify the monstrous situation that you and your peers have helped to create. I have always seen suicide as an act of escape. But now, having lived this disease, I have realized that suicide can also be an act of courage and a manifestation of love for life untrammeled, a manifestation so deep that death is preferred to living without any of life's pleasures. In this respect, suicide is not an escape, but an act of creation and self-definition for someone who has lost all control and all manner of expression. If I have arrived at this understanding, it is not because I do not enjoy life, but because I love life too much to bear living without the things that make life worthwhile. In my life now, I taste only rarely and fleetingly the small pleasures that once made my life so rich. Music was once the great small pleasure of my life, but listening to music now is too physically painful for it to light up my days as it once did. Reading was another great small pleasure of my life, but reading is now punishment. When a layer of horrible pain, suffering, and debility permeates every moment of your life, you find that you cannot appreciate even the simplest moments that you once treasured. But ME/CFS also steals life's greatest pleasures, laying waste to our dreams. Like you, I hope to one day raise a family, develop great friendships, and build a career. Heartbreakingly, those dreams have vanished. Although we are fortunate to have found one another, my wife and I cannot even begin to consider having a child. Perhaps I could adapt to life so diminished. What I cannot bear is experiencing such horrible, unending pain and suffering every minute of every day, knowing that there is no hope of recovery, only the promise of premature death. Until our government begins to take this disease really seriously, I will live every relentless, soul-crushing day knowing that my life will never improve. I will be the living dead until I am dead. And because I am so sick, because we are all so sick, we cannot even advocate for our own futures. It is in this respect that suicide becomes a positive, life-affirming option. When your dreams are foreclosed, when your ability to appreciate life's small moments is nearly eliminated, when all you know is pain, and you have no hope of recovery and no way of bettering your life, suicide becomes a conscious choice for a better future, even if that future is the deep black unknown.
1 minute.
That is the end of this man's statement. Here's my son saying much the same. My son was severely disabled with ME/CFS for 20 years. He had been to multiple doctors, tried multiple remedies, none of which helped much. His words are as follows. Please hang on a second. I have to re-find it. The screen went black. I'm sorry. Hang on just a second. Since very early on in my illness, when it truly sank in that I was incurable, I knew that I felt so bad that without the realistic hope that I would get better, I could not live indefinitely in this state. That was over 19 years ago, and I haven't experienced a day yet which I would be willing to spend decades living life, knowing the next day would be the same forever. That's how unpleasant it's been. I have needed to have realistic hope. The suffering I serve demands this as non-negotiable. I've done extensive research recently, and hope seems to be gone for good for me. My son committed suicide in June 2011 at age 46. He had lost his entire young adult life from the time he was 26 and finally life itself to this disease. There were no approved accessible drugs to help him, and none were forthcoming. CFSAC members and ex officios work to stop the negligent, biased government response to ME/CFS. If you don't, no one in government will, and the suffering and dying will continue endlessly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to take chair's prerogative for a moment. The issue related to suicide and ME/CFS is not. I think all of us know it's not a trivial one, but the discussion of suicide, particularly in a public forum like this, I think needs some level of comment, because there's a spectrum here. There's a spectrum from the hopelessness that would drive someone to consider that to the efforts that are being made. Dr. Fillinger, you want to make a comment?
I was just listening and hearing the sadness, and so much is available now that wasn't, and we are encouraged by that. And this group has takes these things very seriously. I know each of us is working very hard in our different ways, much of it in our discretionary time, after hours, anytime we can. We're meeting together, we're talking together, we're working the system as best we can to move this illness into common terminology so that most providers know what to do. And many, many, many more are every day learning and every day embracing and every day trying the new therapies. So I personally have seen that, and many of us have. But I can imagine that an isolated person or a person who doesn't have access, doesn't know where to go, doesn't know who to go to, maybe feel very desperate. So I would encourage those we do know that there are providers out there, and through our networks, I think we can refer one another to those who do know, especially when we recognize this kind of despair and this kind of thinking. But I would just say that there is hope, and I know that from the practitioners that I talk to, and the way that they're learning and the way that they're absorbing and the way they want to do what's right and what's best. They just don't often know what that is. So I would just say, hold on. Today is today, and tomorrow is going to be completely. Tomorrow is a different day. And
these comments are really not aimed at the people in the room, because the people in the room are giving dialogue and so on. These comments are aimed at someone who might be listening to us either by audio or on the video feed, that if there is someone out there who happens to feel that way, that they would just listen for a little bit longer, particularly the advocacy representatives that will be here after lunch to present, to show that this is not a hopeless situation. All of these concerns that are expressed are genuine concerns. They're legitimate concerns. There are real problems. But it does not, nor have I heard anyone here in the last 2 days present anything that I would view as being hopelessness. If they were hopeless, they wouldn't be here. So I think all of us believe that there are answers that can be had. There are complexities associated with it. If anyone is listening to this and they have a sense of hopelessness, we encourage them to reach out and pay particular attention after lunch, because there'll be some very specific individuals who will speak about resources that are available regionally. I'm sorry to take this out. We will add to the end so that the advocates will get their full time for public comment, but we simply wanted to make sure that this was said in a way that would hopefully be taken positively by those who are listening. Ready to move on?
Can I say one comment?
Let's. I think we need to.
We need to do the public comment. We'll save this for later.
Okay.
Go ahead.
talking about. I think it would be useful to hear it. I'm sure it won't be long.
Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know the caller who called in. She's a fellow advocate, and it was her son, and I knew him, and I just want to thank you for your comments, but we have to find a way to reach people who are even seemingly tapped in to the advocacy resources as Billy's and her son were. So it transcends that. So we got to dig deeper, and we got to come up with not just words. And I'm not saying that that's all it is, but we have to dig deeper because, Billy is a very involved advocate.
Just to be clear, this is absolutely not aimed at the previous presenter. I think her perspective is very clear from the testimony. The comments, both mine and Dr. Fillinger's, are aimed at those who might be listening who have a sense of hopelessness because they don't have the information that the others have. That's the purpose of interrupting this right now, to make this comment and ask people to stay tuned, if you will, to see what some of the other options are available this afternoon. It is in no wise negative toward the previous presenter.
No, I didn't take it that way.
We
I
understand.
took
We
it
understand
only
her
as very
perspective
sensitive, very sensitive
We understand
remarks.
her perspective fully.
Yeah.
Thank you. The next presenter is Robert Miller.
So that was tough to listen to as a patient. And whether you burn my time for my testimony or not, I don't care. To have to listen to somebody that is in that mindset of being so hopeless that nothing is being done for this illness, and to hear the response, and I'm sorry, I don't know your name. You painted a pretty picture, but the reality is, for most patients, that picture is crap. I'm an expert patient. I've been doing this for over 20 years. I know how to move through this system. And I have seen other patients, and I've tried to help other patients. There is not this, grand area for the patients to go to and get help. And I will say it online here. My email address is bobmiller42@msn.com. Anybody listening to this who feels that disparity can certainly contact me directly. Now, I would like to give my testimony.